so they would have complete access to the Japanese islands. Well, about the time they, we had an experience there where there were so many of the ships out there that when the Japanese planes came over from their mainland, and tried to bomb us or whatever else they could do, they started using the kamikazes quite a bit there.
Iwo?
Yeah. And we had one coming in off of our fantail, the rear end of the ship, real low on the water, and you could see it. You don't think right away that's coming toward us, but the more closer it got, the more you could see. It was it was a fighter. It was coming in and it had to pick something out, and it picked us out. So we went for permission to fire. If you don't get permission to fire, you're going to be firing into your own people. So we couldn't get permission to fire. But the Pennsylvania was sitting over here on the side, and it did get permission to fire, and it took it out about a football field away, and just disintegrated it. So that could have been a nasty one, but ended up being nothing. After that, we started heading southwest again into Okinawa, and we were hearing about that invasion about to start. And as we got down there, it had just began. And what happened in that one, the Army was going to be the main force going into that one. And when they landed, they didn't get any opposition. It was really strange. They got their foothold and went in and so on. But after they got to a certain point, where they had retreated to, they really poured it on. And about that time, anything that could fly out of Japan, anything, that could carry a bomb or an explosive of some sort, with a pilot only had to know how to take off. That's all.
Which is easy.
You've seen some movies of that, I guess, where they're giving them a last shot of sake and band around their head and so on.
Bonsai.
They were coming in the hundreds, and their only aim was just to hit something. So when we were going in to Okinawa, some ships that had been pretty well damaged were coming out, and a destroyer went by us with the stacks blown off of it. The main CIC, not CIC, that's
Control, the fire control?
Well, not fire control, where you steer from. I can't think
Bridge.
of it.
Pilot house?
Bridge?
Pilot house. Off. I mean, it just looks like somebody took a cleaver and took it right out. So there was a lot of Navy's casualties in that one, but we were running picket on the outside, and these things were going over us and going inside to try to get the big guys, especially carriers. So,
Did you see carriers often?
oh yeah, we ran carrier duty where
Which ones? Lucky, Saratoga,
Enterprise.
I can't think of the names of all of them now, but
Hornet?
when they landed their planes after coming back from a mission, there was always a destroyer or destroyer escort behind them, because a lot of them come back really badly damaged and hit the deck and just go right into the water, or it was so bad they couldn't even come into the deck and they just ejected. And we would come in and find out, see somebody in trouble, and we had a couple of frogmen on board, and they would just jump in and go over and get them and bring them back to the ship. The water wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't that, rough. But we operated with the carriers a lot that way. And I can't, big ones, little ones, the little Jeep carriers that were, I think those little Jeep carriers damn near won the war. I mean, they took
Those are battleships that converted to carriers, or what were they?
smaller than that. They were landing on postage stamps, They take a troop ship or something like that and just clear off the top. And put
Oh,
it back on
that
the-
was Kaiser and those guys on the West Coast building those little.
They call them Jeep carriers. And boy, you can build one of those in a heartbeat compared to trying to get a big aircraft carrier. But Okinawa was, once they got ashore and they dug in, it was really tough. The Army had a lot of casualties there. And after it was secured, we started heading up the Sea of Japan for Tokyo. It was the last invasion. It was going to be the last invasion. This was in July, August 45. And we got up to where you would head into Tokyo Bay, and we just sort of tooled around out there, not doing much of anything. When they dropped the bombs, we didn't hear them or see them. But little point of interest, I was sitting in a gun room on watch at our 20 millimeter station, and it was windy and nasty. A lot of sea was rough, and I was inside with another guy, and two others were standing watch outside. We'd just rotate, and somebody tipped over a 5-gallon can of oil, and it just sloshed all over the inside of it. We're sitting in that damn oil, just pissed off as could be. And some guy sticks his head in the hatch and says, "Hey, the war's over!" And they threw, they threw everything they could grab at him. But they had heard on a radio transmission that the bombs had dropped and that there was a cessation of hostilities. And
Where were you when the war in Europe was over? How did you hear about that?
that would have been in
April.
Iwo Jima, I guess. February, March. It was in May, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah, May 4th or something.
Well, either finishing up in Iwo Jima or going into Okinawa would have been the time for that. That was good, but you know, we still had hours to worry about. But then they assigned us to they were going to go into the Tokyo Bay and get the surrender sign.
Did you guys have any inkling that there was atomic bombs, or was it well kept secret?
It was a well kept secret. I mean, they might have known there was such a thing, but they didn't know they were out there.
You didn't know.
No.
None of the guys on the ship knew. It was totally.
No,
So what did they tell you? They dropped a super bomb?
Indianapolis,
What did they describe it? How they describe these bombs?
something super. I mean, it's just a super bomb that one would take care of it, you know, that kind of thing. But we were in this outer area of the Sea of the China Sea, I guess you'd call it. And then we started going in because we had to clear the area of mines before you could bring anybody in there to take out prisoners. They had gone in first. The Army and the Marines went in there and they, you know, parachuted in and were liberating all these American prisoners. Troop ships were all set to go in and pick them up. But we had a couple of minesweepers that were just clearing a path going into Tokyo Bay. And then after that was cleared, the fleet started going in, the ones that were designated to go in. And we were operating with the old, it was an old cruiser, Detroit. And we were anchored in Sagami-wan, they call it Sagami-wan or Sagami Bay, which is right outside Tokyo Bay. And we were to watch that in case there was some submarine sneaking around in there and just wanted to do the last bit of damage. And people in the small boats were coming out, Japanese were coming out, and you didn't know what the hell they were going to do, so you had to push them out and keep them away. And then when we were going into the Tokyo Bay area, troop ships were coming out with the prisoners. They had cleared that path. And here's these emaciated, sick, miserable individuals that standing at their lifelines there, just waving. I mean, it looked terrible.
Skeletons?
Yeah. And they were heading out to go back home. And then they had the surrender sign on the Missouri, which was already in there.
Was it in Tokyo Bay?
Hmm?
Is that in Tokyo Bay?
Yeah.
Did you say that they had to put white markings on the guns emplacements?
Yeah. We were looking at it from the standpoint, if it weren't for these bombs, what would we have seen invading Japan? And it wasn't a pretty picture. This wasn't some sand beach. this was a volcanic sticking out of the water, and there's no nice beach to land on or anywhere else. And you'd have to get inside the Sagami or Tokyo Bays to do any offloading. And when we were going in, we saw these sheets flying on the shores, and found out what they were shore batteries, as big as a gun on a battleship or bigger. We had 16-inch on the battleship. There were some 20-inch shore batteries. They were set up in a crossfire.
Yeah, you would have been decimated. It would have been.
They would have just chopped us up. And then the landing would have been something else. And the propaganda was such that the civilians were armed with anything they could find. You know, an old gun they might have had, or a plow, a pitchfork or whatever. They were told when the Americans land here, they're going to just slaughter everybody they see. That's the kind of people they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they told them in Okinawa. They were all committing suicide.
Oh yeah, and the Saipan was the worst.
When you were out off the coast of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, were you guys ever lobbing rounds over as support for the guys on the ground, or?
You mean, well, at Iwo Jima, that's all we did. Is just threw everything in we could. Battleships and cruisers doing the same thing, bombing it every day, but you couldn't get those caves.
I'm thinking well, I don't know for sure, but in Okinawa they probably couldn't dig in. It was probably rocky or something. And then when they found a place, found a place where they could dig in, which is a little bit back, that's why there wasn't much resistance at first. I don't know. I'm sure.
Actually, in Okinawa, they retreated back to a line so they could get the maximum amount of American casualties. They just wanted to kill.
Yeah.
They were delaying. They were just trying to make
Once they got back in there was some real hard fighting by the Marine and the Army in that one. Marines really got it at Iwo Jima, and the Navy got it at Okinawa because they just decimated the ships primarily. But after things sort of cooled down a little bit, and we're in Tokyo Bay, right near Yokosuka, Japan, which is their big naval base.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the Nagato came from.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
But we were given liberty. Go in just one day. You could go in and come back before nightfall.
Liberty and Yokosuka? Mm-hmm. So you can go downtown Japan?
Right.
How many days past the war?
Week, maybe.
That's not smart.
No, but I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like it in my life. When the Emperor of Japan said, "It's over, this is peace from now